The room was already buzzing before anyone even took their seat, but nobody was ready for what happened next. Just minutes into the reunion taping, smiles turned stiff, whispers turned into gasps, and emotions ran so high that security shifted nervously in their seats. Fans are shocked because what was supposed to be a routine recap of old drama instantly spiraled into something far more explosive. Cameras were rolling, tempers were flaring, and then, everything went off the rails. Witnesses say Rasheeda sat frozen, eyes locked on the stage, as a sudden accusation shattered the air like glass. Jasmine Washington, never one to shy away from controversy, allegedly reached into her bag and pulled out something no one expected to see under those bright reunion lights. A single moment, one object, and suddenly the entire narrative changed. Emotions ran high as cast members leapt out of their chairs, voices overlapping in disbelief. Some claimed it was a setup. Others swore they saw Rasheeda's hands shaking. What followed was pure chaos. Rasheeda reportedly stood up, her face flushed with anger and heartbreak, demanding answers no one seemed prepared to give. Fans watching from home would later say they felt the tension through the screen, the kind of tension that makes you hold your breath and lean closer. The family was left divided before a single word could calm the storm. And then it happened. In a move no one saw coming, Rasheeda allegedly exploded out of her seat and stormed off the set, leaving stunned castmates, a shocked host, and millions of viewers asking the same question. Was this the moment everything finally fell apart, or the beginning of an even darker secret waiting to be exposed? The tension didn't cool down after Rasheeda stormed off the stage, it only got thicker, heavier, almost suffocating. Backstage, producers scrambled, voices overlapping as they tried to figure out whether cameras should keep rolling or cut completely. Rasheeda paced back and forth, heels clicking sharply against the concrete floor, her chest rising and falling like she was fighting to breathe. She kept saying the same thing under her breath, over and over, that this was supposed to be a reunion, not an ambush. Her eyes were glassy, but the anger was louder than the tears. She felt humiliated, blindsided, and betrayed in front of millions. On the other side of the stage, Jasmine Washington sat calmly at first, legs crossed, lips pressed into a tight smirk that instantly rubbed everyone the wrong way. Some cast members whispered that she looked way too comfortable for someone who had just dropped a bomb like that. Others said she was shaking, that the calm was fake and her hands were trembling. When the host asked her if she understood the seriousness of what she'd just implied, Jasmine leaned into the microphone and said she knew exactly what she was doing. That was when emotions ran high again, and several people shouted at once, accusing her of chasing attention and destroying families for clout. Fans are shocked because even for reunion standards, this crossed a line. One castmate stood up and yelled that children and pregnancies weren't storylines, they were real life. Jasmine fired back instantly, saying nobody cared about real life when they were dragging her name for seasons. She claimed she'd been painted as a liar, a homewrecker, and worse, and now she was finally done protecting anyone. The room went silent when she said she had receipts and she wasn't afraid to use them. That silence felt louder than the screaming moments before. Backstage, Rasheeda demanded to see Kirk, her voice cracking as she asked him why he hadn't warned her, why she was finding out like this. Kirk avoided her eyes, which only made things worse. She accused him of knowing more than he admitted, of letting another woman walk onto that stage with a storyline that could shatter their marriage. Kirk swore he didn't know about any test, any pregnancy, any plan to reveal something like that. But his words didn't land. The damage was already done, and Rasheeda said trust doesn't disappear in one moment, it erodes over time, and this felt like the final crack. Meanwhile, producers convinced Rasheeda to sit down for a moment, promising her they wouldn't let Jasmine control the narrative. Rasheeda laughed bitterly at that, saying the narrative was already out there and once fans latch onto something, it doesn't matter what the truth is. She said she could already see the comments, the think pieces, the rumors spreading faster than facts. Her biggest fear wasn't just embarrassment, it was her kids seeing clips, hearing whispers at school, watching strangers debate their family online like it was entertainment. On stage, Jasmine was pressed harder. The host asked directly if the test was real. Jasmine paused, just long enough to make everyone uneasy, then said it was positive. Gasps rippled through the room. Some people covered their mouths, others shook their heads in disbelief. One friend whispered that Jasmine had just set fire to everything. Jasmine continued, saying she wasn't saying who the father was, but she wasn't going to let anyone silence her anymore. She said if people wanted the truth, they needed to stop pretending she was crazy. That's when another twist hit. A close family friend stood up from the audience section and accused Jasmine of lying, claiming she'd told a completely different story weeks earlier. The family was left divided in real time as arguments broke out not just on stage but in the crowd. Security moved closer as voices got louder, accusations flying from every direction. Jasmine snapped back, accusing everyone of suddenly becoming moral when it suited them. She said nobody defended her when she was being dragged, so she owed no one comfort now. Backstage, Rasheeda watched the chaos on a monitor, her jaw clenched. She said she felt like she was watching her life turn into a circus. Every time Jasmine spoke, Rasheeda's anger mixed with something deeper, something more painful. Doubt. Even if she wanted to dismiss it all, the seed had been planted. She said that was the cruelest part, that even lies, once spoken, have consequences. Kirk tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away, telling him she needed space because she didn't recognize the man standing next to her anymore. As the segment dragged on, producers debated whether to shut it down, but the drama was already out of control. Fans are shocked not just by the allegation, but by how raw and unfiltered everyone became. Tears flowed, voices cracked, and alliances shifted in real time. One cast member admitted they felt sick watching a family unravel for ratings. Another said the truth always comes out, no matter how ugly. And somewhere between the shouting and the silence, it became clear that this reunion had crossed a point of no return. When Rasheeda finally stood up again, it wasn't with the explosive rage from before, but with a cold resolve that sent chills through the room. She told producers she would return to the stage, not to fight, but to make one thing clear. She said if Jasmine was lying, she would expose it. And if she wasn't, then everyone involved would have to face the fallout. As she took a deep breath and headed back toward the lights, the air felt charged, like the calm before another storm, and nobody knew what would be left standing once it hit. As Rasheeda stepped back onto the stage, the energy shifted instantly. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, and even Jasmine straightened up in her chair, clearly not expecting Rasheeda to return so soon. The host tried to regain control, welcoming Rasheeda back, but Rasheeda didn't wait for permission to speak. Her voice was steady, almost too calm, the kind of calm that comes after you've already cried all your tears. She said she wasn't there to scream or throw drinks or give anyone a viral moment. She said she was there for the truth, and only the truth. She turned her body slightly toward Jasmine, not aggressive but direct. She asked one simple question. When exactly did you find out you were pregnant? Jasmine hesitated, and that pause didn't go unnoticed. Fans are shocked because that silence felt louder than any argument. Jasmine answered with a vague timeline, saying she found out recently that everything had been moving fast, and that she was still processing it herself. Rasheeda nodded slowly, then asked another question. Why bring it here? Why now? Why on this stage? Jasmine's tone changed then. The calm mask slipped, replaced with frustration. She said because nobody ever listened to her before. Because every time she spoke, she was called bitter, obsessed, or desperate. She said this was the only place she knew people couldn't cut her mic. The room reacted immediately. Some people nodded, others scoffed. Emotions ran high again as cast members jumped in, accusing Jasmine of using a pregnancy as a weapon. Jasmine fired back that she didn't owe anyone silence to protect their image. Kirk finally spoke up, his voice shaky. He said he had nothing to do with this, that he hadn't seen Jasmine in years, that he was tired of being dragged back into old drama. Rasheeda looked at him for a long moment before saying that wasn't the point. She said the issue wasn't just whether the baby was his or not. The issue was that Jasmine felt comfortable enough to stand on that stage and shake their family again. She said that kind of confidence doesn't come from nowhere. Another castmate leaned forward and asked Jasmine if she had proof beyond the test. Jasmine smirked again, reached into her bag, and pulled out her phone. Gasps echoed through the room as she said she had messages, calls, and timelines that would make everything make sense. Producers immediately stepped in, telling her she couldn't just reveal private information without clearance. Jasmine snapped that everyone else's privacy had never been respected, so why should hers be protected now? The family was left divided even in that moment, with some pleading for restraint and others demanding receipts. Rasheeda stood up again, but this time Kirk followed her. He grabbed the microphone and begged everyone to stop. He said this was spiraling, that whatever mistakes had been made in the past didn't deserve to destroy the present. Rasheeda turned to him, her eyes filled with tears now, and said the present was already damaged. She said she'd spent years rebuilding trust brick by brick, and one allegation just knocked down the wall. Fans are shocked because for the first time, Rasheeda admitted she didn't know if she had the strength to rebuild again. The host attempted to steer the conversation toward clarity, asking Jasmine directly if she was claiming Kirk was the father. Jasmine said she never said that. The room exploded. Multiple voices shouted that she knew exactly what she was implying. Jasmine yelled back that people were projecting guilt where there was none. She said if the shoe fit, that wasn't her problem. That comment pushed Rasheeda over the edge. She said that was manipulation, pure and simple. She said Jasmine wanted chaos, not closure. As the argument escalated, security stepped closer, sensing things could turn physical. One family member stood up from backstage, yelling that Jasmine should be ashamed that kids were involved. Jasmine screamed back that nobody protected her when she was younger, when she was dragged through the mud alone. The pain in her voice caught some people off guard. For a brief moment, the room quieted, and even Rasheeda looked conflicted. Empathy flickered, then disappeared just as fast when Jasmine added that she wasn't done talking yet. The host announced a short break, hoping to cool things down. Cameras followed Rasheeda backstage again, where she finally broke down. She cried openly, saying she felt stupid for thinking the past was truly buried. She said every time she felt safe, something dragged her back into survival mode. Kirk tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away, saying she needed honesty, not reassurance. She asked him if there was anything at all, she should know before this got worse. Kirk swore there wasn't, but his voice cracked, and that crack echoed louder than his words. Back on stage, Jasmine sat alone for a moment, her bravado fading. Another castmate sat beside her and asked quietly if she was okay. Jasmine admitted she didn't expect it to explode like this. She said she thought revealing the test would finally make people stop calling her crazy. Instead, it made everything messier. Fans are shocked because Jasmine, for the first time, looked overwhelmed by the storm she created. She admitted she felt trapped between telling her story and being painted as a villain no matter what. When filming resumed, the host announced that due to the seriousness of the situation, this would be addressed carefully. Rasheeda returned, eyes red but posture strong. She said she had one final thing to say. She addressed the fans directly, saying she understood speculation would run wild, but she asked people to remember there were real humans involved. She said if Jasmine was lying, time would expose it. And if she wasn't, then the truth would surface whether anyone liked it or not. Jasmine responded by saying she wasn't afraid of time. She said she'd already lost enough to survive whatever came next. That statement hung heavy in the air. The family was left divided not just between sides but between sympathy and skepticism. Cast members whispered among themselves, alliances quietly shifting as everyone tried to decide where they stood. The host attempted to wrap the segment, but Rasheeda wasn't finished. She turned to Jasmine one last time and said that if this pregnancy was real, she hoped the child would never have to carry the weight of adult mistakes. Jasmine looked down, blinking back tears, and nodded slightly. For a split second, the chaos softened. But just as quickly, the tension returned when Jasmine added that she wouldn't be silenced anymore, not for anyone's comfort. As the lights dimmed and the cameras slowly pulled back, it was clear this reunion had changed everything. Trust was fractured, reputations were hanging by a thread, and questions far outnumbered answers. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the fallout was only beginning. Nobody knew what receipts would surface next, who would be exposed, or whether this alleged pregnancy would become the most explosive twist the show had ever seen. All anyone knew was that nothing would be the same after this. The aftermath didn't wait for the cameras to shut off. Once the reunion segment wrapped, phones were already buzzing backstage. Assistants whispered about trending hashtags, producers argued over damage control, and cast members huddled into small groups, choosing sides without saying it out loud. Rasheeda sat alone in her dressing room, staring at her reflection like she didn't recognize the woman looking back. She kept replaying Jasmine's words in her head, not the loud ones, but the quiet pauses in between. Those were the ones that hurt the most. Outside the studio, fans were already divided. Some defended Rasheeda fiercely, saying she'd been humiliated enough over the years. Others claimed Jasmine deserved to tell her story, no matter how uncomfortable it made people. Emotions ran high online, with clips looping endlessly, slowed down, analyzed frame by frame. Fans are shocked by how quickly sympathy shifted depending on who spoke last. One moment Jasmine was painted as a liar chasing attention, the next she was a woman finally refusing to be silenced. Backstage, Kirk was pulled aside by producers who warned him that this wasn't going away quietly. They told him the network would need statements, boundaries, and possibly legal clarification if Jasmine decided to release anything publicly. Kirk nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about Rasheeda's face when she said she didn't recognize him anymore. That cut deeper than any accusation. He tried to convince himself that truth would protect them, but doubt crept in anyway. Not because he was guilty, but because he knew how fragile trust had become. Jasmine, meanwhile, was surrounded by a completely different energy. A few people rallied around her, offering water, tissues, and quiet reassurance. She accepted it, but her eyes stayed glued to her phone. Messages poured in, some supportive, others cruel. She read one aloud that called her a liar who deserved everything coming to her. Her hands shook as she locked the screen. She whispered that this was exactly why she stayed quiet for so long. When you speak up, everyone decides who you are without knowing the whole story. A producer asked Jasmine directly if she was prepared for what came next. Jasmine said she didn't know if anyone ever really is. She admitted she felt exposed, raw, and terrified, but also relieved. She said carrying something alone for too long eats you alive. The producer asked again if the pregnancy was real. Jasmine looked him dead in the eye and said yes. That answer sent another ripple through the room. Even without cameras, the weight of that word felt heavy. The following day, statements began to circulate. Rasheeda released a short message asking for privacy and respect for her family. She didn't mention Jasmine by name, but the subtext was clear. Jasmine posted something far less subtle, saying she refused to be gaslit anymore and that the truth didn't need permission to exist. Fans dissected every word. Emotions ran high as comment sections turned into battlegrounds. The family was left divided not just on screen, but in public opinion. Behind closed doors, Rasheeda had a long conversation with Kirk that cameras didn't catch. She asked him again if there was anything he hadn't told her. Kirk insisted there wasn't, but this time he added something different. He admitted that he underestimated how unresolved the past really was. He said he thought time had healed wounds that were never properly closed. Rasheeda told him that ignorance doesn't erase impact. She said even if Jasmine was lying, the fact that their marriage could still be shaken this easily scared her. Jasmine went to a doctor's appointment shortly after, accompanied by a friend. She didn't film it, but word spread fast. Some claimed it was proof, others said it was staged. Fans are shocked by how nothing feels neutral anymore. Every move became evidence for one side or the other. Jasmine said she felt like her body had become public property, debated by strangers who didn't know her name beyond a headline. Weeks passed, and the reunion fallout only intensified. Teasers dropped hinting at unseen footage. Producers teased that conversations were cut, moments left unaired that could change everything. Anticipation built, and so did anxiety. Rasheeda avoided social media entirely, focusing on her kids and her businesses. But late at night, she admitted she still scrolled, reading theories she wished she could unsee. She said the hardest part wasn't the hate, it was the uncertainty. Jasmine finally broke her silence again with a live video. Her voice trembled as she said she was tired. Tired of fighting narratives, tired of being reduced to a storyline. She said she never set out to destroy anyone's family, but she also refused to disappear to make others comfortable. She admitted she regretted how the reveal happened, but not that she spoke up. That admission softened some hearts, hardened others. Rasheeda watched that live quietly. When it ended, she turned off the phone and sat in silence. She said she didn't know what closure looked like anymore. She said maybe there isn't always a clean ending, just choices about how much chaos you allow into your life. She wondered aloud if forgiveness was possible without certainty. Kirk listened, knowing there were no right answers, only consequences. As rumors swirled about possible DNA tests, legal action, and future confrontations, one thing became clear. This wasn't just reunion drama anymore. It was a collision of past wounds, public pressure, and deeply personal stakes. Fans are shocked by how real it all feels, how messy and unresolved it remains. Emotions ran high at every turn, and the family was left divided between protecting themselves and facing whatever truth still waited in the shadows. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a question lingered that no statement, no live video, no reunion stage could fully answer yet. Was this the beginning of clarity, or just another chapter in a cycle that refused to end? The pressure reached a breaking point when unseen footage rumors became reality. Clips began leaking online, grainy at first, then clearer, showing moments from backstage that never aired. In one clip, Jasmine was heard telling a producer that she knew exactly how this would look, that chaos was unavoidable once the truth was spoken. In another, Rasheeda was caught whispering that she felt set up from the start. Fans are shocked because these moments added fuel to an already raging fire, confirming fears that this reunion was never going to end cleanly. Rasheeda finally agreed to sit down privately with Kirk and a mediator. No cameras, no microphones, just raw conversation. She admitted she felt exhausted, like she'd been fighting ghosts for years. She said Jasmine wasn't just a person from the past, she was a reminder of every moment Rasheeda felt insecure, every time she had to defend her worth. Kirk listened quietly, then admitted something he'd never said out loud. He said he avoided addressing the past fully because he was afraid of reopening wounds he didn't know how to heal. That admission hurt almost as much as the allegations themselves. Jasmine, on her end, faced mounting pressure from all sides. People close to her urged her to release proof or stop talking entirely. Strangers demanded answers she wasn't ready to give. She said it felt like being cornered, forced to choose between silence and self-destruction. Emotions ran high when she posted another message saying she was prioritizing her mental health and stepping back. Fans immediately speculated that meant she was lying. Others argued it meant the opposite. The family was left divided yet again, with no clear ground to stand on. Then came another twist. A source close to production claimed Jasmine had taken a second test, and the results were being kept private. The rumor exploded overnight. Rasheeda heard about it from a friend before she saw it online, and something inside her snapped. She said she was done waiting for clarity that might never come. She told Kirk she needed boundaries, space, and time away from the noise. Not a breakup, not a promise, just distance. Kirk agreed, though the fear in his eyes was obvious. Jasmine later addressed the second test rumors indirectly, saying she was tired of people speaking for her body. She said pregnancy should never be entertainment, even when the circumstances are messy. That statement resonated with some fans, angered others. Emotions ran high as people debated whether Jasmine was taking accountability or deflecting. Every word she spoke felt like it was under a microscope. Weeks turned into months, and the fallout lingered. Rasheeda slowly returned to public life, appearing strong but guarded. She spoke about resilience, about protecting peace, but avoided specifics. Fans are shocked by how composed she appeared, knowing how deeply she'd been shaken. Behind the scenes, though, she admitted she still woke up some nights replaying that moment on stage when everything changed. Jasmine stayed mostly offline, resurfacing only briefly to thank supporters and ask critics for grace. She said she never imagined her truth would cost so much. That sentence sparked another wave of debate. What was truth, and what was interpretation? Where did accountability end and exploitation begin? The family was left divided not just by sides, but by philosophies about silence and survival. Eventually, whispers of a final confrontation began circulating. Not on a reunion stage, not on social media, but behind closed doors. Rasheeda agreed to meet Jasmine privately, with strict boundaries. No cameras, no recordings, just conversation. When they finally sat across from each other, the air was thick with years of resentment and unresolved pain. Jasmine spoke first, saying she never wanted to hurt Rasheeda directly. Rasheeda replied that intention doesn't erase impact. Both women cried. Both women listened, and for the first time, neither tried to win. The meeting didn't end with hugs or forgiveness. It ended with honesty. Jasmine admitted the reveal was reckless. Rasheeda admitted she'd avoided confronting the past because it scared her. Emotions ran high, but there was no shouting, no spectacle. Just two women acknowledging damage without pretending it could be undone. When word of the meeting leaked, fans were stunned. Some praised the maturity, others called it staged. But those close to the situation said something shifted that day. Not resolution, but understanding. The family was left divided still, but less fractured than before. As time moved on, the alleged pregnancy became less of a headline and more of a private matter. Jasmine confirmed she would handle everything away from the public eye. Rasheeda stopped reacting altogether. Kirk focused on rebuilding trust quietly, knowing words mattered less than consistency now. In the end, there was no dramatic reveal, no viral receipt drop, no clear winner. Just consequences, growth, and unanswered questions. Fans are shocked because reality TV promised closure, but real life delivered something messier. Emotions ran high until they burned out, leaving behind silence and reflection. And maybe that was the real lesson buried beneath the chaos. Not every explosion leaves ruins. Sometimes it just clears the smoke enough to see where you stand. The silence that followed felt louder than any argument that came before it. Once the dust settled, everyone involved realized something had permanently shifted. Producers stopped calling as frequently, blogs moved on to the next scandal, but the emotional weight stayed behind like a shadow that refused to leave. Rasheeda tried to settle back into routine, school drop-offs, studio sessions, business meetings, but every quiet moment gave her mind space to wander back to that stage, that test, that pause before everything exploded. Kirk noticed the change in her before she ever said a word. She laughed less, trusted slower, questioned more. He knew patience was the only currency he had left, so he gave it freely, even when it hurt. Some nights they talked until sunrise, unpacking old wounds they never thought they'd reopen. Other nights they sat in silence, both afraid to say the wrong thing. Emotions ran high in private, long after the cameras were gone. Jasmine, meanwhile, faced a different kind of aftermath. Opportunities dried up, invitations stopped coming. People who once encouraged her to be loud now urged her to stay quiet. She admitted to a friend that she felt punished not for lying, but for disrupting a narrative people were comfortable with. She said being right doesn't always mean being protected. Fans are shocked by how quickly public sympathy can turn into public fatigue. At the same time, Jasmine struggled with something deeper. The weight of being believed versus the cost of speaking. She questioned whether revealing anything publicly had been worth it. She said sometimes she wished she'd handled it differently, but other times she reminded herself that silence had nearly broken her. The family was left divided even in her own mind, between the version of herself that wanted peace and the one that needed truth. Rumors continued quietly, less explosive but persistent. Whispers of timelines, private conversations, moments that didn't add up. Rasheeda heard them too, but she stopped engaging. She said at some point you have to choose whether you're going to live your life or let speculation live it for you. Fans noticed the shift. Some called it strength, others called it denial. Emotions ran high in commentary spaces that Rasheeda refused to enter anymore. Jasmine eventually made a decision that surprised many. She stepped away completely, deleted old posts, and focused on rebuilding privately. She said healing doesn't happen on timelines set by strangers. That move angered critics who wanted answers, but earned respect from others who saw it as growth. Fans are shocked by how quickly the narrative changed once Jasmine stopped feeding it. Months later, during a quiet moment, Rasheeda admitted something that hadn't been said out loud yet. She said the hardest part wasn't Jasmine, it was uncertainty. Not knowing what was real and what wasn't. She said certainty gives pain edges, but uncertainty lets it bleed everywhere. Kirk listened, knowing there was nothing he could say to fix that. Trust, once cracked, takes time to mend, and sometimes it never returns to its original shape. The show eventually aired its final reunion episode, heavily edited, softened around the edges. Viewers could feel something was missing. Moments hinted at but never shown. Conversations cut short. Fans are shocked by how unfinished it all felt. Reality TV promised answers, but delivered ambiguity instead. Emotions ran high in comment sections, but even outrage felt tired now. Behind the scenes, Rasheeda and Kirk made choices quietly. More boundaries, less public sharing, protecting what remained instead of explaining what broke. They didn't announce anything dramatic. No statements, no ultimatums. Just intentional distance from the noise. The family was left divided in public perception, but privately, they focused on survival. Jasmine resurfaced briefly months later with a simple message. She said she hoped one day the situation would be remembered with more compassion than judgment. She didn't mention names, didn't revisit details. Just asked for grace. That message didn't go viral, but it lingered. Fans are shocked by how different it felt without accusations attached. As time passed, the alleged pregnancy stopped being a headline and became a footnote. Unanswered questions remained, but life moved forward anyway. Rasheeda focused on legacy, Jasmine focused on healing, and Kirk focused on accountability. None of it was perfect. None of it was clean. But it was real. Looking back, those closest to the situation said the reunion didn't destroy everything, it exposed what was already fragile. Secrets, assumptions, unresolved pain. Emotions ran high because the stakes were personal, not performative. The family was left divided, but also forced to confront truths they'd avoided for years. In the end, there was no dramatic winner, no clear villain, no satisfying closure. Just people learning that some explosions don't end with applause, they end with reflection. And maybe that was the part nobody was ready for. Time had a strange way of dulling the noise but sharpening the memories. Even as the headlines faded, the emotional residue refused to disappear. Rasheeda found herself replaying small details she once ignored. The way Jasmine paused before answering certain questions. The way Kirk hesitated before reassuring her. None of it proved anything, yet all of it lingered. She said the mind fills gaps when certainty is missing, and those gaps can become dangerous if you let them grow unchecked. Friends noticed Rasheeda becoming more selective. She stopped explaining herself. She stopped defending her marriage to people who had already made up their minds. When asked how she was really doing, she often answered with silence before saying she was learning how to protect her peace. Emotions ran high beneath that calm exterior, but she refused to let the world see her bleed anymore. Fans are shocked by how firm her boundaries became after years of openness. Kirk felt the shift too. He knew rebuilding trust meant consistency, not speeches. He showed up differently, listened more, reacted less. Still, he carried his own frustration. Being accused publicly, even indirectly, left scars. He admitted to a close friend that no matter how much he defended himself, doubt seemed to follow him like a shadow. The family was left divided not just by opinions but by emotional distance that words couldn't immediately close. Jasmine's journey unfolded far away from cameras. She focused on therapy, on reconnecting with parts of herself that existed before controversy defined her. She admitted there were days she felt empowered and days she felt completely broken. Speaking her truth had given her a voice, but it had also taken pieces of her safety. She said people underestimate the cost of being loud when the world decides you're inconvenient. Occasionally, Jasmine would receive messages from strangers thanking her for her courage. Other times, the messages were cruel enough to make her put the phone down for days. She said healing came in waves, never linear. Fans are shocked by how much vulnerability she showed once the spotlight dimmed. Without an audience, her pain felt more real, less performative. Months later, a rumor resurfaced quietly, suggesting a final confirmation that never came. No proof released, no dramatic reveal, just silence. That silence became its own statement. Rasheeda noticed that people stopped asking her questions directly. Instead, they spoke around her, careful, cautious. She preferred it that way. She said some things don't need closure to be survived. The show moved on. New storylines, new drama, new faces. Yet longtime viewers couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. Fans are shocked by how unresolved it all felt, like a chapter ripped out before the ending. Emotions ran high not because of what was said, but because of what never was. Rasheeda eventually spoke in a quiet interview, not addressing details, but addressing impact. She said public pain doesn't heal the same way private pain does. She said when the world watches you hurt, it changes how you grieve. The family was left divided in the aftermath, but she refused to let division define her future. She said growth doesn't always look loud, sometimes it looks like walking away. Jasmine watched that interview later. She said it stirred something complicated inside her. Not anger, not guilt, just recognition. Two women caught in a situation bigger than either of them. She admitted she didn't know if things would ever feel resolved, but she hoped time would soften the sharpest edges. Emotions ran high even in reflection. Kirk, for his part, accepted that redemption isn't instant. He said accountability means living with discomfort without demanding forgiveness. He focused on showing up for his family, even when silence felt heavier than confrontation. The family was left divided in public opinion, but privately, they worked towards something quieter and more sustainable. Years from now, people would still reference that reunion moment. The walk-off, the test, the silence that followed. Fans are shocked by how one moment can redefine so many lives. But those closest to it knew the truth was more layered. It wasn't about one reveal. It was about years of unresolved pain colliding in public. In the end, the story didn't close with answers but with choices. Rasheeda chose peace over explanation. Jasmine chose healing over visibility. Kirk chose accountability over defense. Emotions ran high until they settled into something more manageable. The family was left divided but also wiser. And maybe that was the real ending. Not the one viewers wanted, but the one real life delivered. Unresolved, imperfect, but honest in its own quiet way. Even after everything, the ripple effects kept surfacing in unexpected ways. Casual conversations would suddenly turn awkward when someone mentioned the reunion. Rooms would go quiet, eyes shifting, as if everyone was thinking the same thing but didn't know how to say it out loud. Rasheeda felt that tension everywhere she went. She learned to smile through it, to change the subject, to remind herself that other people's curiosity didn't deserve unlimited access to her life. There were moments, though, when the weight came crashing back. Late nights when the house was quiet, when the kids were asleep, when distractions ran out. That's when the questions crept in again. What if? Maybe. Did I miss something? She hated herself for letting doubt linger, but she also knew pretending it didn't exist wouldn't make it disappear. Emotions ran high in those private moments, far from cameras and commentary. Kirk noticed those moments too. He learned to sit with her without trying to fix it. Sometimes that meant listening. Other times it meant accepting silence. He realized reassurance only worked when trust felt intact, and rebuilding that meant patience he'd never needed before. The family was left divided emotionally, even when they were physically together, navigating a new normal that felt fragile but necessary. Jasmine's path forward was quieter but no less complicated. She found herself redefining who she was without controversy attached to her name. She took classes, traveled briefly, spent time with people who knew her before headlines did. She admitted to a close friend that sometimes she missed being heard, even when being heard hurt. Silence felt safer, but also lonely. Fans are shocked when they realize how isolating it can be to step away from the noise you once fought to break through. Every now and then, Jasmine would see an old clip resurface. A slowed-down frame. A dramatic caption. She stopped watching them. She said healing can't happen if you keep reopening the wound. Instead, she focused on small victories. Waking up without anxiety. Laughing without guilt. Imagining a future that didn't revolve around proving anything to anyone. The public, however, never fully moved on. Debates reignited whenever a new episode aired or an anniversary of the reunion approached. Fans are shocked by how long a single moment can live in collective memory. Emotions ran high in spaces that Rasheeda and Jasmine both avoided now, choosing distance over defense. Rasheeda eventually recognized something important. Closure doesn't always come from answers. Sometimes it comes from acceptance. She accepted that not every question would be resolved publicly. She accepted that people would believe what they wanted. She accepted that her peace mattered more than convincing strangers of anything. That realization didn't erase pain, but it softened its grip. Kirk, too, changed in ways that surprised people close to him. He became more introspective, more aware of how silence can be misinterpreted. He said he learned that avoiding conflict doesn't make it disappear, it just delays the explosion. Accountability became a daily practice, not a statement. The family was left divided by history, but united by a shared desire to move forward. Years later, when asked about that reunion, Rasheeda would pause before answering. She'd say it was one of the hardest moments of her life, but also one of the most revealing. It showed her who she was when everything felt out of control. It showed her what mattered when the noise faded. Fans are shocked when they hear her speak with such calm about something that once looked so devastating. Jasmine, when asked in a rare conversation, said she wouldn't wish that experience on anyone. She said speaking your truth in public doesn't guarantee understanding. Sometimes it only guarantees judgment. But she also said she didn't regret choosing herself in the end. Emotions ran high even in hindsight, but they no longer consumed her. The story, as time passed, became less about the alleged test and more about the aftermath. About resilience. About boundaries. About the cost of unresolved pain meeting a public stage. The family was left divided in narrative, but real life rarely fits into clean story arcs. What lingered most wasn't the drama, but the lesson. That reality TV magnifies cracks that already exist. That words spoken in heat can echo for years. That healing doesn't look the same for everyone. Fans are shocked by how deeply a moment meant for entertainment reshaped real lives. In the end, no dramatic confirmation ever arrived. No final reveal. Just people continuing forward, imperfectly. Rasheeda chose stability. Jasmine chose healing. Kirk chose consistency. Emotions ran high until they found new places to rest. And maybe that was the quiet truth beneath it all. Not every story ends with clarity. Some end with growth. Some end with distance. Some simply fade into memory, leaving behind changed people who learned, the hard way, how fragile peace can be when the past refuses to stay buried. The conversation around the reunion slowly shifted from shock to reflection, but the echoes never fully disappeared. Every few months, a clip would resurface, a comment would go viral, and the cycle would try to restart itself. Rasheeda learned to recognize the pattern. Outrage, speculation, silence. She refused to participate anymore. She said protecting her peace meant refusing to reopen doors she'd fought hard to close. There were moments when she felt proud of how she handled it all, and moments when she felt exhausted by the strength everyone expected from her. Strength, she realized, is often just survival with better posture. Emotions ran high in private even when she looked unbothered in public. She admitted that some wounds don't hurt every day, but when they do, they ache deeply. Kirk continued doing the quiet work. Therapy, accountability, showing up even when he wasn't sure he was wanted in the room. He said the hardest part was accepting that trust isn't something you earn back with one grand gesture. It's built in ordinary moments, over time, with consistency. The family was left divided by what had happened, but committed to not letting it define every chapter that followed. Jasmine's life took a turn that few people saw coming. Away from the noise, she found clarity. Not answers, not validation, but clarity about who she wanted to be moving forward. She said she stopped measuring her worth by whether people believed her. She started measuring it by whether she believed herself. Fans are shocked when they hear how much growth happened away from the spotlight. She acknowledged that revealing the test on that stage changed everything. It gave her a voice, but it also cost her safety, peace, and control over her own story. She said if she could go back, she might choose a different path, but she wouldn't choose silence again. Emotions ran high when she admitted that two things can be true at once. You can regret how something happened and still stand by why you spoke. Over time, the narrative softened. Not because answers emerged, but because people grew tired of outrage. New scandals took center stage. Attention moved on, but for those involved, the impact remained personal. Rasheeda noticed how her kids became more aware, more protective. That alone made her fiercely determined to keep certain things private. She said not every part of your life deserves an audience. Anniversaries of the reunion came and went. Each year, fewer people talked about it, but those who did spoke with a different tone. Less venom, more curiosity. Fans are shocked by how perspective changes with time. What once felt explosive now felt tragic, human, layered. Rasheeda eventually said something that stuck with many people. She said closure isn't a moment, it's a decision. A decision to stop asking questions that only reopen wounds. A decision to accept that some truths will never be fully known. The family was left divided by circumstance, but united in choosing forward motion over endless conflict. Jasmine echoed a similar sentiment in her own way. She said healing didn't mean being believed by everyone. It meant believing she deserved peace regardless. She stopped explaining herself, stopped correcting narratives, stopped chasing understanding from people committed to misunderstanding her. Emotions ran high until she learned to let them pass without reacting. Kirk reflected later that the reunion forced him to confront parts of himself he'd avoided for years. Not just mistakes but patterns. Avoidance, fear, the desire to keep things calm at the cost of honesty. He said discomfort became a teacher, not a punishment. Accountability became something he practiced quietly, daily, without applause. What remained most striking to outsiders was the lack of a final answer. No DNA reveal, no explosive confession, no dramatic apology tour. Fans are shocked because reality TV conditioned them to expect endings wrapped in certainty. Instead, they got something closer to real life. Unresolved, imperfect, ongoing. The story shifted from scandal to cautionary tale. About what happens when unresolved pain meets a public platform. About how quickly narratives harden. About the cost of turning personal trauma into entertainment. Emotions ran high because the stakes were never just ratings. They were real lives, real families, real consequences. In the years that followed, Rasheeda spoke less but said more. Jasmine lived quieter but stronger. Kirk showed up steadier, humbled by experience. The family was left divided in public memory, but privately, they forged a version of peace that didn't require agreement from the outside world. And maybe that's where the story truly ended. Not with confirmation or denial, but with evolution. People changed, priorities shifted, boundaries hardened. What once felt like an explosion became a turning point. Not everything was healed, not everything was forgiven, but something important happened anyway. They learned that survival doesn't always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like walking away, carrying lessons instead of receipts, and choosing to build a future that isn't controlled by the loudest moment of your past. And now it's your turn. After everything you've just heard, the unanswered questions, the emotional fallout, and the choices each person made, one thing is clear, this story is far from simple. Was Jasmine wrong for how she revealed it, or was she pushed into a corner where silence felt impossible? Did Rasheeda handle the situation with strength, or was she forced to survive something no one should face publicly? And where does accountability really begin and end when the past refuses to stay buried? Fans are still shocked, emotions are still divided, and the truth feels layered in ways only real life can deliver. Some believe this was manipulation. Others believe it was pain finally speaking. And many are still torn right down the middle. So now we want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the alleged pregnancy reveal crossed a line, or do you think it was the only way Jasmine felt heard? Did Rasheeda make the right choice by stepping back and protecting her peace, or should she have demanded answers no matter the cost? Let us know which side you're on, or if you think there are no sides at all. If this story kept you hooked, make sure you hit that like button, because it helps the channel more than you know. Subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss any of the twists, breakdowns, and deep dives coming next. And turn on notifications because when the next bombshell drops, you'll want to be the first to know. This isn't just reality TV drama. It's about choices, consequences, and what happens when private pain becomes public spectacle. Stay locked in, stay curious, and stay ready, because stories like this don't really end, they just evolve.